Hi, this is Doug Ward from Tech Britain. We're in the beautiful city that is Edinburgh. I'm very happy to be here with Dr. Colin Adams. Thank you very much for your time, Colin.
You're welcome.
It's a real pleasure to meet you. I should say we met earlier in the past. We had a very kind invitation for EIE, which was really superb. We'll get onto that in a minute. But just to start with, Colin, can we talk about your background?
Okay, so I started way back in the early 70s. I was the first computer science graduate out of Edinburgh, which is one of the earlier computer science schools. And I became an academic initially, did a doctorate, and then went to the United States, to Massachusetts, joined Digital Equipment Corporation, which was the king in the mini-computer era, with PDP-11s and VAXs. And I ended up running the operating system group, VAX VMS, which was a real fun experience in those days. So there was a bunch of really good guys there. And then I ended up running their office automation business. So Apple was one of my competitors. I remember hating the Mac because it wasn't one of ours. And came back to the UK, set up a pretty large organization in Reading in those days, with a variety of groups throughout the US and a little bit in Europe. And then I left DEC in the mid-80s to found a silicon startup called European Silicon Structures. The main claim to fame we had then was that was the biggest A-round raise in the 80s in Europe. We took 50 million on the A-round.
Wow. Which
was an interesting experience. And I'd never done that before, basically taking other people's money. And then towards the end of the 80s, 1990 actually, first Gulf War, I did a buyout of the software division from ES2 called UCAD. We ran that for a while, and then we sold that to Cadence Design Systems, who were the big beast, or in those days they were a small beast, but we ended up taking Cadence to being #1 in the electronic design market. So that, shall we say, was the 90s. At the end of the 90s, I did the Tality MBO from Cadence, which would have been really good if the bubble hadn't burst. We ended up reintegrating that into Cadence later on. And then I retired, and we were setting up this project here with the School of Informatics at that point, and I kind of got really bored, came back, and have been playing here, trying to do startups with the school ever since.
Wow, I mean, I could go into quite a lot of that, because that's super cool.
Yeah.
I've got to stick to the questions, otherwise
stick to your script.
It'll be like a 3-hour interview. But in terms of Edinburgh right now, obviously we're in Appleton Tower. Just for people out there who have not come across Appleton Tower, what is it called?
Okay, so let me give it a little bit of context. So Appleton Tower is the ugly building. Across the road, if the camera would ever swing round, you'd see a beautiful new building that went up about 3 years ago called the Informatics Forum, which is the home of the School of Informatics. And the School of Informatics is a very simple USP. It's the largest single research establishment of its type in Europe. So it's the biggest computer science research grouping. Top 4 in the world: MIT, Stanford, Edinburgh, and Carnegie Mellon. And it's the best in the UK by a clear factor of 2 in the research assessment exercise, which the UK government runs every 5 to 7 years. So we can say that with an absolutely straight face. And shall we say, there is more research power in Edinburgh than there is in the next 2 combined. And the next 2 combined are pretty good international class departments. So it really stands out. It's got scale and it's got excellence. A really big group of really bright people. And what we've been trying to do is figure out how you do something other than purely academic things with that kind of talent pool. We set a project up back in 2006 called Prospect to look at doing something different in KT, in knowledge transfer, getting stuff out into the world. And what we kind of zeroed in on was that we really should focus on startups so it stayed local. We kind of want to boost the local economy. Shortbread and whiskey can only take you so far. What else are we going to do? And the big claim for fame there is we did 43 startups and spin-outs in 5 years, which would make the school about the 3rd most productive UK university over that period. So we feel pretty good about that.
That's amazing.
And that also has kind of formed this community of startups, which is another kind of key piece. you know, it's fun doing something, but if you've got other people doing similar things that you can meet up in the pub, have a cup of coffee with and discuss, you kind of feel like you're not out on your own. And that's one of the things we've been trying to do here in the tower. I've got 3 floors of commercialization space. We deliberately do not call it an incubator, because everybody has a different meaning for incubator. So it's just kind of a living tutorial. You know, if you go to college, you learn a lot in lectures, but you learn a heck of a lot when you go to tutorials. And you don't tend to learn that from the guy standing up at the whiteboard. You learn it from the student sitting next to you who also didn't quite understand what was going on, or the one on the other side, the absolute swot who did. So you get a lot crosswise, if you like, education, you know, from other people in your peer group who kind of come at it from different angles. So the theory is that because we've got a bunch of companies, all at early stage, all are tech-based, all in one place, they're going to learn from each other. They're going to learn over the coffee pot, having lunch, going out to the pub. And as we start to do things, we run a lot of events, we bring a lot of visitors in and things like that, there's a ready-made group to talk to. And that's pretty well worked. So we've got, I think now, about 20 companies in the tower. It kind of comes and goes because it's meant to be a launch space. All early stage, ranging from sort of social website plays like FanDuel to good, what I describe as hard ICT stuff like Contemplate, which does program proving, bug removal from Java, to CloudSoft, who are doing private cloud optimization and moving around for a large number of big financial institutions. And a few in games, like speech graphics, who've got a kind of death mask model of the face, and they can absolutely match and lip sync the speech in games, so you get much more realistic, experience, and things like that, and a few in the kind of drug crossover area and stuff like that. So very wide market range, but all tech-based. So it's a bunch of geeks, and geeks talk to geeks, and that kind of works. And if you look at most of the other kind of major clusters, major areas, you're going to find that. You're going to find a grouping of companies.
Absolutely. I mean, going around the community, everybody's buzzing about what's going on here. Just so proud that the university is so forward-thinking and just gets it. You know, it's kind of a big switch from the academic to going into this kind of thing. It's just so refreshing, not just for an outsider looking in, but everybody in the community to have this. And
that's a piece of it. Is a lot of the things we do here. We started a bunch of tech meetups because there wasn't a kind of central place for the geeks to get together. So we run these, once a month to kind of tempt the geeks out. We run them after dark, safe, and we provide beer and pizza. It's like cheese in a mousetrap. But the kind of key piece is it's the community that organises it. We kind of bring in people that can speak and things like that, but they get to choose which ones they want. Mm-hmm. They organise it, they drive it forward. And that's been very successful. We have that working here. We're doing one over in Glasgow, which actually at the moment is even bigger than the one in Edinburgh. We've got one going in Aberdeen, and at the end of the month we've got one starting up in Dundee. And it's this kind of, it's driven by the people for the people kind of stuff that is really good. That's kind of hard.
Yeah. Just thinking back when we were interviewing the guys at TechCube, they couldn't speak highly enough of the university, which is only a great thing. They were pushing the fact that talent, they're starting to see people are staying in. I mean, Edinburgh is a beautiful city. I mean, I can see why people would never want to leave here, but now that community's here, it justifies it. And you've got the companies like Skyscanner and Free Agent that people are looking up to now, who are also engaging in the community. I'm just super impressed, and it's really exciting to see what's going on here. Can we speak about EIE? Because that was a great event. I'd love to get your take on what is EIE.
Right. Okay, so EIE is Engage, Invest, Exploit. And we started this 5-6 years ago. And at that point, there was an organization called Connect. And Connect ran investor conferences. So it tried to connect the startup community to the investment community. And they were running an event in the autumn. We wanted to have an event focused on tech. Tech, probably not the tradition here, if you look at how the angels have invested in the past. So we wanted to get something going in tech, because we had a whole bunch of techies. So we worked with them initially and started this investor conference. And the idea was get a critical mass of opportunities. Then the investors could come in, could see a whole bunch of companies at once, and figure out the ones they liked, so we could start to partner up and get the money flowing so that the things could develop. And it's developed essentially since there. It's probably now one of the bigger tech investor conferences outside of London. We get typically between 30 and 40 companies in the exhibit, going from broadly software through silicon, the kind of broad range of the tech space, and from all over Scotland. It's not just Edinburgh. And then we do kind of targeted publicity to as many investors as we can. Basically the idea is get the money on the floor, talking to the guys with ideas. So we target London, which is obviously where the bulk of the VCs are. A very good local angel community here. I mean, but Scotland has something like 35 different angel syndicates, and it's very strong in that band. They've not traditionally been active in tech until very recently. They've been more in the kind of medical devices and bio kind of areas, but that's changing. We've got a few connections with people in the Valley, a few connections with people in Europe and stuff like that. Basically get everybody in, let them see what's going, and give a platform to the companies. And then we do quite a bit pre the show to get the companies ready. We do a lot of pitch training, articulation. Geeks are not usually as good at articulating their ideas in a non-technical way as they really ought to be. So we kind of focus on that. And then it's up to the companies. At the end of the day, if you're doing a startup, it's up to you. There's nobody can do it for you. And over to them, we give them the platform, off they go.
And Sir Jackie Stewart, I mean, can we talk about that?
Yeah, what we've done is always try to get a name in, a kind of inspirational figure. Mm-hmm. So what we did in the past, we did a lot of stuff with Stanford and the Valley, because the Valley's the place everybody wants to be, Silicon Valley, when they grow up. And the simple answer is nobody's going to be Silicon Valley when they grow up, unless you're going to have about 50 years of very heavy defence spending to throw in, and I doubt the UK or Scottish government's going to do that. So everybody's got to find their own model, but you learn from other people. And we brought a bunch of people over. Henry Chesborough, in the Open Innovation guy from Berkeley, and Guy Kawasaki, the kind of the old Mac evangelist. Good guys like that, very good speakers. But we've switched this year more onto what I describe as a local hero kind of kick, to try to get people to understand there are people who've made it in Scotland, who sound like you, act like you, came from the same schools, so you can do it here. And we've been running that in another series of events, but then we thought, well, who can we get who really would attract people to come in, and who is very much a local hero. Well, you don't get much more of a hero than Jackie Stewart, and I'm petrolhead and grew up glued to the TV set and Autosport magazines and whatever else. So actually having the guy there, it was, the god has just descended on the forum, and he's just shaking my hand. It was brilliant. And he's a very good speaker. He's very, very professional. Huge attention to detail. A good example on a bunch of fronts.
A lot of people in that room had some watery eyes. I'm not going to say I was one of them, but yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah.
So in terms of next year, EIE is a yearly thing. So next year...
so next year, 9th of May, mark it in your diary now. Mm-hmm. What we're going to do next year is extend it. We've got about as big as we can get in the tech space on its own, and we like to keep momentum going. Mm-hmm. And there's a number of other areas within Scotland where there is a kind of growing community, and we're trying to do kind of crossover activity there. So next year, 9th of May, we always have it in May. We're going to be in the Assembly Rooms in George Street in Edinburgh, which is a really nice location, and we're going to add 2 other sectors. Bio, the kind of medical crossover, pharma activity, is one that there's a lot of a very strong community within Scotland, Edinburgh, Dundee, Glasgow, and our friends at BioQuarter, who run a kind of parallel project, the one we have here, focused on around the medical school. They're going to bring their community in, and also carbon innovation. And we have the Edinburgh Centre for Carbon Innovation just down the road. They're working with a lot of people on clean tech, a lot of policy activity with government authorities in various countries, and also, you know, translating right through to, you know, how do you actually, you know, get people not to have to burn carbon in a number of different kind of aspects, be it transport, be it you know, production or whatever. So they're going to bring in a bunch of clean tech guys. So we're going to have a much bigger conference then, with these kind of three wings and the crossovers you get. So, you know, how tech really affects the biosphere, which is strong and growing, and how tech is one of the main areas to solve a lot of the carbon problems, you know, along with windmills and whatever else on the more mechanical side. So we're looking forward to that next year. And we got Sir Tom Hunter, who's one of the big local beasts, and again a guy you can have as a role model, who's traditionally never been in tech, but he's been in just about every other area, as one of the keynotes. And we're going to have a couple of other keynotes we'll announce a bit closer to the time.
Fantastic. Yeah, we're saying off camera the great work he's doing at Entrepreneurial Spark. We've been around the UK and we've been telling people about it, just saying this is a winner.
Yeah.
So that's great to hear. For people who are thinking about either staying in Edinburgh for the tech community or maybe from an outsider looking in, what would you say Edinburgh's strengths are as a tech community?
Okay, let's see, Edinburgh. It's a real nice place. It's a good place to find and keep talent. And you know, one of the, should we say, you know, it's not just Edinburgh. One of the other projects we have actually works across Scotland. There's a research pool of all the Scottish universities, so it's almost like a trade association of all the computer science, informatics departments in Scotland. And you know, there's an awful lot of good stuff going on there, and one of the other things that's good stuff coming out of those places is raw talent. So if you're trying to do a startup, you're going to find a bunch of really good people, and more they're coming around to, it's fun to go do a startup, as opposed to just go work for a bank, go work for a software house, go work for Microsoft, all the good valid jobs. But should we say, if you're still young and a little bit of a rebel, that's the time to do a startup. One of the things I always tell as a story, when we started this project way back, I did a quick survey of the last 20-25 years of disruptive tech companies. And if you look at them, the bulk, but not all, were created by a male under the age of 25, came up with the original idea, drove that to being about $500 million or so in valuation personally. Right? Gates, Woz, Jobs, Skype twins, Google twin, our dear friend at Facebook, who was a billionaire by the time he was 25. A lot of the new ideas are about doing it young, when you're not burdened by grey hair and having been there and got burned so many other times. And it's really getting kids enthused to go do it when they can. And that's part of the fun.
Fantastic. And we've come back up to Edinburgh. The touring festival's on, well, the Fringe festival's on in the city. You can feel the buzz and the atmosphere going on here. And we've got the touring festival. We thought Jamie Coleman was a great advocate for Edinburgh. I mean, Steve Wozniak to be coming to the touring festival, it kind of sells itself, really, doesn't it?
Oh, it's always good getting, icons and gods.
Yeah.
And they're great. It's always good to see these guys in the flesh. It's inspirational stuff. It's one of the things we probably don't do enough of here. We tend to knock hero figures down rather than build them up. That's one of the strengths the US has. It actually holds people up as role models and heroes and says, look, we can all do that. You have a go. We have a tendency to say, I didn't do that, so I'll try and find out 10 reasons why I really didn't like the guy. So we've got to get that kind of culture change going.
Together we can do that.
Yeah.
Just one last question, Colin. We'd like to ask this in terms of the government's role in all this. What do you think they can be doing to help the tech community?
They help seed it and then stand back. And we are funded by Scottish Enterprise, which is the regional development authority for the Scottish Government, and by Scottish Funding Council, who's the kind of central body for the universities. And we, in the past, have taken money from Europe and places like that to help set the programs up. A lot of it is making sure the education's there, making sure there are kind of signposts that kind of point people at, look, here's where you get help, here's where you go for investment, here's where you can go find accommodation, and try and set up the infrastructure. And that's one of the roles of the government, is prepare the soil and make it available to anyone who's going to come in and take a chance. And that's what we try and encourage. We try to discourage are then hanging on and trying to run the companies, because that's not, that really has to be over. The companies have to take control of their own destiny.
Colin, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Cheers.
Cheers.